Hi guys, I'm Ananya Panday and welcome back to So Positive Season 2 sponsored by Bumble. Today's guest is someone who helps people figure out something that most of us spend our entire lives struggling with, ourselves. She's a writer, a filmmaker, and honestly the most emotionally aware person that I know. Please welcome Shaheen Bhatt. Hello Shaheen.
Hello, Ananya.
My favorite person in every room.
Same.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You are engaged.
I am.
To be wed.
I am.
How
I'm
do you
betrothed.
feel?
Same, honestly.
What do you mean?
I mean, it doesn't feel like massively different. It feels good. Yeah, like, I mean,
Okay.
it feels great, but it feels like, yeah, cool. I mean, I always knew this was my person, so like that doesn't change.
I feel like crying. That's so cute. But did it change your relationship in any way? Like, does it happen that there's like a transition between like a boyfriend to a fiance to then like a husband? Does it change the roles in a relationship?
No, I don't feel like it changed anything because, like I said, it's like this is my person. I knew this is my person. I think the only difference is that, like, I constantly have someone to bounce my thoughts and emotions off now. You know, like my emotions are the same, but they're always landing in a room with somebody now. If that makes any sense. So. Yeah, the landscape doesn't change so much. It's just like how you're experiencing it changes.
But speaking of love and like loving someone the most in the world, both of us love our sisters the most in the world.
much.
We both are big sisters and we both have younger
Yeah.
sisters. So explain what role your sister has in your life, especially when it comes to managing your feelings and your emotions.
I feel like it's so, like, you'll know this for a fact, it's so different, like, when you're experiencing feelings with a sister versus a friend. Because,
Yeah.
your friends really know you, but a sister is the only person who has all the, like,
Context.
historical,
Yeah.
mythological family context that nobody else can have. They know what it's like to grow up in the same house with the same, like, things that annoy you, trigger you, piss you off. They know exactly what it's like to, you know, see you go through various different emotions. So my sister, that way, it's like, it's not just comfort, it's calibration. You know, like, she gives all my feelings a lot of context. So there's times where she's like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll help talk you through this emotion that you're feeling. Sometimes she's completely unimpressed by my spiral and going like, listen, this is your overthinking this, you don't need to
Yeah.
be feeling the way that
Yeah.
you're feeling. So it's like a lot of, like, calibration and a lot of context that a sister gives you, which I'm sure you feel like the same. I have to ask you this. Has there been, like, a moment where your sister has, like, jumped in and stopped you from spiraling, like, emotionally, like, in any way? Has there been a moment where she's just come in and stopped you from spiraling?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as you said, how sisters are the only people in the world who just get that context of everything, of why you're feeling a certain way. It could be related to the most random thing in your childhood. So I think with my sister, there doesn't have to be so much that's said. You know, if something even happens, I feel like I don't call her and tell her that blah, 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 this happened. With her, I can just rant and I can vent, and she doesn't even like tell me what to do. Like, she'll never be like, okay, you know, like, let's sit down and give me some solution, because she's my younger sister at the end of the day. I think from her, I just like when she's talking about her life, because then that just is already stopping me from emotionally spiraling.
It's like interrupting the mental
And
loop.
she knows that I need that. You know, she knows, because I'm such an overthinker. And if someone starts feeding into my thing, being like, yeah, you're right, and do this, then I can just keep going on and on till no end. But the moment she'll just like talk about some silly thing happening in her life, that'll just kind of snap me out and just ease things out in my mind. Or she'll make me laugh, or she'll tell me some silly story. And she's doing it like, in her head, it's very intentional, but I think it comes off as unintentional, which I think is like the best way to deal with something.
Yeah.
But why do you think people overthink so much in general?
I feel like know what you want from the conversation. Like, self-awareness is everything. You can say hey to somebody, and that hey can come from a place of loneliness. It can come from a place of excitement. It can come from a place of curiosity. It can come from a place of just wanting validation. So
In a hey?
in a hey, because you are loading it with all of that. When you're saying hey, only you know what you
Yeah,
want and what
that's
you're
true.
hoping
That's
for
true.
the person to respond. The other person doesn't know. So self-awareness on your part. Are you just lonely? Do you really want to connect with this person? What are you looking for before you go into this conversation? If you don't know that, then the conversation's obviously not going to flow or give you what you want anyway.
Yeah, I think the moment you know what it is, then you show up differently and then the conversation will flow also.
Yeah, because
in a
again, you're
certain
showing
way.
up authentically. At least you know exactly what you're kind of there for. Especially when it comes to when we're texting.
Yeah, mostly
Because
text.
I mean, I feel like there's a huge gap between what you can see and what you're receiving, right? Like I can't see your facial expression when you're sending me a text. So based on what you're sending me, I'm just using whatever I'm feeling and I'm putting it onto what you're saying and assuming that that's the place that you're coming from, and it may not be that. Like sometimes okay is quiet anger, sometimes it means hey, this person is in a lift, you know what I mean? They're just like, you're just moving really quickly and sending a text. So the overthinking, I think, comes from the gap between how much information you have in real time, and it's just a lot of, like I said, it's just like creative storytelling that you're making up. And I feel like the thing to pay attention to more is like the pattern rather than, just
If they're
overanalyze.
constantly talking
Because if somebody is constantly, like, that's information. If somebody's constantly seeming dismissive to you and what you're saying, that's information, and you have like a longer pattern to go on. But like one text overthinking, it could be anything. They could be in the middle of something. You don't know where somebody is when you're, for you, you're sending a message. You don't know where they're meeting it,
No, that's so true, because I feel like now with social media and messaging, we feel this need to instantly be available for everyone. First it was okay if someone took a little longer to respond to a message, but now it's like if someone doesn't respond within 1 hour, it's like the end of the world, or they're angry with you, or they're upset, and then again you're jumping to conclusions, and then sometimes it's like, oh, they took 1 hour to reply, I'm going to take 2 hours to reply, and it becomes this whole like vicious cycle of playing games. And I feel like I've done this before. Like, before, sometimes if I've even met a person, for example, if I've just followed someone, on social media, and we're just talking on social media, in my head, I've built them to be a certain way. I'm like, oh, this person is like this, and they like this and that, and they talk like this. And it's this whole narrative that I built in my head. And then when I ended up meeting the person, I'm like, wait, they're actually
It's
very
not-
chill. It's
yeah,
not what I'm thinking.
it's not
it
this
is.
person,
So have you
yeah.
done that before? Have you like created a whole scene in your head and it's not that in real
I feel
life?
like we always do that, especially especially when you're communicating over text, because it's a very specific medium, and like someone can be a really brilliant texter and then be very different in real life. Like there is a gap. Like there's an art to texting. I'm a writer, so I'm a good texter. Like that's something
you
that
always send these like really articulate.
yeah, like,
and,
I feel like I'm a great texter, but at the same time, I feel like I'm very inarticulate when I speak. Like, I don't feel as articulate when I speak as opposed to like when I'm texting. So I feel like we've all done that. We do that with everybody. Like, especially if you don't know somebody and you meet them for the first time, you build a version of them based on whatever like little trickles of information you get through the texting phase. And then when you meet them, you're like, oh, okay. They're either completely different than I thought in a good way, sometimes in not such a good way, sometimes they can kind of match up, but it can be like a variety of different things.
But what do you think the key thing is that you need to jump from like a surface level conversation into something that's a little more intimate and a little more emotionally connecting in that way?
I feel like generic questions will give you generic answers. So if you text somebody and go like, hey, how's your day? You're going to get a pretty generic response to that. Versus if you're like, hey, what was the most annoying thing that happened to you today? So I feel like specificity is where confidence actually lives. So like, if you're stuck in small talk, giving them more small talk is not going to fix the situation. It's going to only make it worse. So instead, what you can do is introduce something slightly off script, something that doesn't belong there, and just break the cycle and break the loop a little bit.
Disrupt the pattern.
Yeah. So like the more specific you are, it's also sometimes about sharing detail about yourself. So if you share something about yourself, you're more likely to then get something back if you feel like somebody's kind of holding back. I feel like generally in any conversation for me, like if you want to move from surface level to communication, sometimes sharing just a little about yourself is a great way to get it back.
And that's how you get an idea also of how actually that person is.
Yeah,
because if it's just a surface level conversation, it's so much easier to just fake it or be a certain way. But once you get into like the actual deeper questions, then you kind of understand more.
Because then you're actually forced to show up, I guess, like, in a way, like you said, to connect as opposed to perform, hey, like I'm trying to be a certain version to make this person like me.
But that's easier in the digital world, right? To like fake it, and boundaries also get crossed so much more easily in a digital world, right?
Yeah, because there's this screen between you and the person. Texting in general is a thing that inherently has distance in it. You know, and a person, like, it's human nature, you will always test something because it doesn't feel, you don't have the person in front of you. Like when you say something, if I was to say something mean to you right now, I would have to deal with your reaction in real time. Like your face would change, you would feel bad, and I would have to like process that feeling.
Yeah, you can get the emotional cues from
Versus
someone's
if I'm
voice
sending you
or
a mean
expression.
text,
Yeah.
I may not intend it to be mean, but if
Yeah.
I'm sending you a text, I don't have that emotional feedback and that information that I'm getting. So I can do a lot of things. Even if you feel bad about it, I can be like, oh, but I was joking. I didn't, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean it like that. Oh, it was like, just don't be so serious. Don't take it so seriously. And like when it comes to humor, I think people use humor a lot of the time to, like to test a boundary.
Yeah.
Because then if you laugh at it, the boundary changes. But if you don't laugh at it, it's like, oh, but I'm
they're not okay with
joking.
that,
So
yeah.
I'm like less concerned with, is the joke mean, and more like, hey, what's the joke trying to get away with?
So I recently read somewhere that Dan Levy, like the creator of Schitt's Creek, I love him. I think he's so funny.
Love.
He actually said this. He was like, it's funny in a way because you're kind of understanding what makes human beings tick, but you should not make someone the butt of your joke. And I thought that was really interesting.
If you have a text relationship with somebody you know really well, saying shut up lands completely differently than if it's a new person. They'll be like, hey, I mean...
Yeah, because when you know someone, you have a set of like codes in which you talk to, as opposed to trying to impose those codes onto someone who doesn't know you. So I
Yeah.
think then you have to approach from a little more...
And they know your speaking voice also, you know what I mean? They know like what you sound like. So
Yeah, like when I
that
text you,
yeah.
I read your text out in your voice because
same.
I know you.
Yeah, exactly. I do the same thing. I'm literally reading it like in your
Saying
voice.
it. But
yeah.
it takes time to develop that.
Yeah, you have to have a like relationship with somebody or converse with them enough like one-to-one to actually know what that sounds
But then
like.
again, it comes down to like the permanence of a message and a text and like saying something to someone. And that's why it's very important to be aware about what you're putting out into the world.
Yeah, because once you
sense.
say it, you
can't
can't really
take it
unsay it.
back.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
there.
there is an unsend option.
Yeah, but yeah, you have to like use it in time. You know what I mean? Like before.
And that's why I like the Bumble's feature, which is review before send, when you might be sending something which another person might feel uncomfortable with, or it may just come off not in the way you intend for it to be, then it kind of just like to review what you were saying. In our heads, sometimes things sound so much better, but actually when we say it or we type it, it doesn't come across as
Because
that.
you're not meaning it like that. I feel like in general, pauses are so underrated. Like you should really pause before you send a lot of things. I remember when I was like 16 or 17, I was talking to this boy. And he was like, we were talking on the phone and he told me that he liked me. And I didn't like him. Like I didn't like him. I didn't like him. Because he was just like, I liked another boy.
Oh, okay.
So after I hung up with him, I went to text the other boy who I liked. And I was like, oh, this one just told me that they liked me. And oh God, it was so awkward. And like, I didn't know what to do. Except I'm thinking about the guy who told me that he liked me. And I sent it
Oh no, that's
to
the
him.
worst thing that can happen.
And at that point, there was no pause to review. There was nothing. I had to turn my phone off and hold it across the room.
Then how did you come back from it?
I managed because I was like basically like, no, because, I was thinking about you when I was sending you this text, but actually that guy told me that he liked me. So like, I managed
and he
to
believed you, then you have some real convincing power.
I was like, no, like I was thinking of you. That's why. So I said your name, but I don't know how, like obviously it's like, but how many people are telling you that they like you at the same time? Like how in demand are you? But a pause would have been really beneficial to me at that point because I could have been like,
But my mom always says that. She's like, why do you need to answer in 1 second? Like, just think, just count to 10 in your head. But I'm like, I just want to be funny, or I want to say like the quickest
I
or
want to
the
say
smartest.
like the smart repartee kind of like
but
answer.
it usually doesn't go as planned. And another thing is like, when your read receipts are on and then someone like sees your text and then they don't respond, especially in like the early days of dating, it sends you into this stays in this spiral. Like, why does that happen?
Because I feel like a read receipt is this very specific amount of information, but not enough information. Like, if somebody hasn't read your text, like if you can't see that they've read it, then you can build like, okay, they haven't seen it. So it doesn't feel like a rejection about the thing that you said. And you can build like a list of things in your head, okay, this is why they've probably not seen it. That's why they've not responded. If they've seen it and responded something half, like, not exactly what you want, you can still be like, okay, fine. They like took the time and they saw it and they responded. But knowing that someone has seen it
just
and then
makes
not
you feel vulnerable.
No, because then that's when your creative overthinking storytelling in your head happens, where you're like, there's 1,000 different reasons in your head as to why they've not, and it ranges from, oh my God, I said the wrong thing, they're offended by what I said, they hate me, they don't like me, and then you're sitting with all this spiraling that you're doing, and you have to go about like you're having dinner at
Normal.
home with your family while you're like spiraling,
And no one understands why it's such a big
and you're
thing.
like completely in on yourself, trying to like figure out what you've done
So that's
wrong.
happened to you where you're like, someone's seen your message and then not responded
Yeah,
and
it's
you
happened.
spiral.
Like, yeah, it's happened. Like I think with it happened with friends also, but I think it hurts the most when it happens like in early dating or
Early
like when you're
dating.
trying to get to know someone, because again, like I said, there's just that lack of context. You don't know the person well enough to know why maybe they're not responding. You know, so it hurts, and like it's a very specific kind of like.
Yeah, that's happened to me so many times where it's like I type something and then they see it and you're like in a flow state. You know,
Yeah.
when like how we are kind of like in a flow state when you're just like chatting and one person saying this, that, and then suddenly it's like read and no response. And I've like freaked out, and then the next day that person's like, oh, sorry, I just fell asleep. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
what do you
that
mean?
fell asleep
How can
thing
you
has
just fall asleep?
Fell asleep has happened a lot where I've gone and I made this entire story
But how do
narrative
people
in
just
my
fall asleep? I don't
know. I really
understand.
wish I had this gift because I cannot fall asleep. It
Falling
takes me 2
asleep,
hours
is
to
it
fall
ritual?
asleep. Yeah, it takes. I need 3 hours in bed. Like I have a whole thing that I have to do to be able to.
It's
fall
like, and I have to prepare for it to just fall asleep.
Yeah. So I can't just fall asleep on a text.
But I think, especially in our country, meeting the person is a big event. So a lot of people just actually start off a lot of relationships just by picking up on texting.
like texting is the
cues.
only cue that you have. Yeah.
So, and if you have to give like one piece of advice on how to just be authentic in texting and how to be like a clearer communicator, how to show up authentically online, what would you say?
I think contact is not connection, so don't mistake like the fact that somebody can be constantly responding to you but not be present.
Yes.
And ignoring, like, is somebody picking up on something that you said like 7 texts ago or in the last conversation that you had, that's somebody being present and being like, oh, I'm actually paying attention to the content of what we're talking about, as opposed to, you know, somebody who's just constantly responsive but you feel like they're not actually listening to
they could
what
be just
you're
replying
saying.
to like 20 people at the
Yeah.
same time and you're just like one of those people.
Yeah.
Like for me when I was younger, like love bombing felt like that's someone actually showing their emotion, like someone who sent me good morning texts and good night texts, but actually that's all fluff. Like how much does it take for someone to just send that generic message to everyone? Like when someone gets like too friendly too fast, like if they're just like baby Janu like after 2 days,
like unknown nicknames.
yeah, I think that can get a little bit too much. I would say that's quite an ick.
Yeah, no, fully agree.
That's
like
not-
I feel like it's this, like you need to build a certain level of like comfort and trust with somebody before you go into like nicknames, and like don't accelerate it too fast. Like just
Suss the vibe.
yeah, no, be okay with like a slow burn exploration, because at least that feels like more authentic and more organic.
As I've gotten older, like for me, a much sweeter thing is someone remembering like a small detail, or like if I say that, oh, this is my favorite kind of flower, and then them bringing me that flower, or like a song that reminds me of them. I feel like these are much healthier and better ways
It's
to
just
show.
more personal, and it feels like somebody's not jumping the gun. Like because also like the thing with love bombing is it's just like you don't know someone. That's
Yeah.
just too much intimacy.
But that's another feature that Bumble has that's really good, which is the private detector feature. And it kind of blocks out or like blurs out any untoward message that you may be receiving. So it's up to you and it's in your hands if that's something you want to see or you want to open. But it kind of adds that one layer of, you know, like,
it gives the power back to the receiver,
To the
basically,
receiver,
because
yeah.
like consent in these days is not just physical anymore, it's also digital consent is a thing. So like it's amazing that you can actually take power back and go, okay, I want
and it's my
to-
choice if I want
Yeah,
to see
because
something
otherwise
or not
somebody
see
just sends you something and it's in your brain before you want it to be in your brain. So like at least this is like, yeah, you can choose.
That's the one. That's the one. Thank you for this. Genuinely, this was one of my favorite conversations. I really had fun.
Same.
Okay, guys, so I have some so positive homework for you guys. The next time that you hit send on a text, check and see if you're genuinely trying to connect with someone or you're just trying to impress them, because those are two very, very different energies. Okay, see you. Bye. Getting unsolicited lewd images is an ick. It's never okay, and frankly, it takes the fun out of dating. Use Bumble's private detective feature to blur the images you don't want to see, and then report the person who sent them to Bumble's support team, and they'll take care of it. You can follow the status of your report and find more ways to stay safe in Bumble's Help Hub.